What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today I'm going to show you how you can create this bat autumnal cave design. Now as always, you're going to want to grab all of the requirements from the post over on Patreon. That's where you'll find the canvas size, the palette, as well as the guide, and that will take you through the whole process from start to end using those items. Everything else is built into Procreate. I'm using the 5.4 update as well, so you'll need that so you can grab all the latest brushes. And while you're over on my Patreon, check it out, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters, and their catalogue sits at over 150, nearly 160 exclusive tutorials at the time of recording, and with 3 more added every single month, that just continues to grow. So make sure to check that out. Again, using the link in the description down below is where you'll find the requirements and my Patreon. And with all that said, let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, you're going to want to add in the guide that I have created for you. And to do that, you're going to want to go up to your actions. You're going to want to go to the add option here and insert it as a photo or from your files, depending on where you save the PNG image to. That should mean then that everything is transparent but the lines, and then the only other thing I've done is tapped on the layer, tapped on rename, and just called it guide. Now before we get started, I do know of course that I go at a pace that sometimes people find a little bit too fast or even too slow. Now if you go ahead and tap in the top right corner up here on the settings cog of the video, so tap on the video, tap on settings and go to playback speed, you can always slow me down, and then that'll fit your pace a little bit more, but of course I can't match everybody, so yeah, that's just an option I wanted to point out straight away. Now let's go ahead and start drawing in some layers. Let's create a new layer and drag it underneath our guide. We're going to go to our colors. We are going to grab the color in the top left of the palette. We're then going to go back to our layers and go to our background color and switch that out to the color in the bottom right of the palette, very yellow-ish tone, and hit the tick. And then on this empty layer, we want our brush to be set to, we want to be in pens, and we want to be the Elphinstone brush. Of course, this is the 5.4 update. And then brush size doesn't really matter, but I've got it set to 32% maximum opacity. And then we're going to go back to our guide and just tap on it and bring its opacity down to around about sort of 35%. So you can just about see it on screen. And we can draw in this line here, and that's going to be like our little cave here. So I urge you to draw that line in there and kind of then let go and then just create the jagged rock shapes. And if you keep your pressure somewhat nice and light to a degree, you might be able to create like nice jagged wobbly lines all the way down into this kind of area down here, and then make your way all the way through it and then off down to the right hand side. Then drag and drop your color into that left hand side, and that is going to be your kind of cliff wall there on the left. We're then going to go ahead and create a new layer. We're then going to drag that layer underneath the cliff wall. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab the bottom of the second column from the right, and then we're going to draw in another cliff edge that's over here on the right hand side. So you're going to bring that in, and you can create kind of whatever kind of shapes you want, to be honest with you, because as long as you keep sort of rocky-ish shapes, you're all good. So something like that, and then drag and drop your color in. You see, of course, we've got the guide to kind of work towards, which will help us a lot. And then we're going to make our way backwards. So we're going to go ahead and create another new layer and drag it underneath the last one. We're going to go to our colors and grab the middle of the second column from the right. Up here is where we want to start drawing in like a bit of a cliff. Now it's not drawn in the guide necessarily, but you want to kind of draw it into like here, and then kind of just create like a cliffish like shape here, and let that kind of run in behind here. So I've gone all the way through, off to the right here, so I can drag and drop my color in. And then from there, we're going to go to our brushes. We're going to change our brush. We're going to go into grunge and the pepperberry brush. Now let's set the size to something around about say 50% just to get us started with. And then just up here, you're going to start drawing in like a circular motion all the way up to the very top edge of your screen. And it's quite grungy, of course, as the brush is, but you'll be able to sort of draw in like greenery in a way that's like super quick and easy. And you're going to somewhat follow this line of the guide all the way down here. Let little speckles come through here and there, that's perfectly fine. And you can keep your pressure a little bit lighter, and it does like it when it's a little bit lighter, because you do get like a bit more of a smudge-like effect to it. So if you can do that, that would be great, but it's not mandatory to necessarily do so. I'm just going to add in a little bit more kind of almost like branch-like arms almost sticking out from here, just to sort of add in some variety, but you still got that cliff edge up there. You could add in like a little bit sort of hanging off of there perhaps. We're then going to make our way backwards. So we're going to go ahead and create another new layer, drag it underneath that last layer we were working on. Then go to your colors. We're going to go to the top of the second column from the right. We're then going to go to our brush again and go back into the option of pens and the Elphinstone again. And then we're going to start making our way from front to back in a way. So we're going to start here. We've got this sort of jagged line here, and I want to kind of follow that down. Don't worry sort of too much about heavily sort of detailing it, but as long as you go all the way from top to bottom, you can drag and drop your color into that left hand side. And then you can jump between the brushes again and go back to the option of grunge and the pepperberry. Get that size about down to about sort of 20% perhaps, and then in certain spots you can just sort of round in a circular motion to create like bushes and textures and perhaps like trees even. I mean, feel free to even draw in a tree as well if you want. We are going to do that on the next layer, so just to sort of pre-warn you, and it's only simple because it's background content, but that just sort of breaks up the sort of straight line. Then let's create another new layer, drag it underneath again. We will give you the opportunity later on to tidy up your layers, so you won't need to keep hold of all of these. Top now of the far right column, brush again, back into pens, and then Elphinstone again. I'm going to bring in a piece of land that's going to sort of cliff edge like into here. It's going to come down and it's going to sort of jag it up and then go all the way down to the bottom right. Drag and drop my color in. Now I've obviously not gone all the way to the edge of the screen somewhere, so I can drag and drop it now and then it fits. There we go. Now, as I said, on this layer, we're going to go to, we can keep our pen for a minute, that's perfectly fine. Just up here, we can draw in like a main tree trunk, and they're going to sort of branch off and then just create lots of thin, it's a very, very distant tree, so you don't need to sort of detail it too heavily. You just need to focus on just creating the illusion of like a tree in the distance. Literally something as simple as that. Perhaps even like a branch maybe just sort of trailing down as it sort of makes its way off the cliff edge. Maybe it's a bit heavy, maybe the wind. And then we'll go back to our brush again, go back down to grunge, pepperberry again, and then what's the brush size? Let's go to about 25%. Should be able to just draw in like little patches throughout the branches to kind of create the density. A little bit thicker perhaps towards the outside edges. A couple of patches. It is an autumnal kind of scene, so you don't need to fill out the tree entirely. Just get yourself that lovely standard sort of procedure of a tree shape. I do urge you then to grab your brush though and just rough up the edges of the land, especially very close to the tree. You know, maybe there's greenery growing there as well. A little bit running down the edges. You don't have to do it everywhere, but just like little bits here and there of just growth basically. Then let's go to our layers and create another new layer. Drag it underneath again. Go to your colors. We want the middle of the far right column. Brush. Go back into your pens again. Elphinstone. Now typically I never do this in my tutorials because I always want you to know the categories, but you can go to recent at the top and of course it will see the brushes that we've already used. So, and a little tip as well, you can swipe the brush to the left and go to find and it will find it in the category for you. So we can go to recents for now if you'd like, seeing as we have just shown you how to do that. Let's go ahead and then bring in another piece of land, cliff-like edge. I'm just going to run all the way down all the way off to the right hand side, drag and drop the color into that left hand area. And then we're going to go ahead and create another new layer, drag it underneath again. You can keep the same color, but just tap on the layer and bring its opacity down to around about say 45-50%. And just create another layer should you wish. Now this one can be like here, can be like a bit more jaggedy perhaps, and like just a little bit different towards the bottom. And then drag it into that left hand side. Now that might look a little bit too repetitive, so you might want to move the last layer we just created to the left, just to sort of make sure that the gaps are not sort of the same gap every single time, that they've got like a bit of difference. And you can leave this open void space here, it's perfectly fine. Now again, we are going to go back to our pepperberry brush again, which again under grunge, but just use recent at the top. Rough up the edges where you feel you can, just keep it very simple, just very simple, just rough it up. And then at that point, we're going to actually tap on this and bring it down to its final opacity, which I think will be around about 35%. So we've got all of our background scene coming together. Let's just try and add in like a bit of atmosphere. Now, these layers here backwards, where we've got this layer and the four in total, you can pinch them together onto one layer if you wish and create a new layer in front of it. Go to your colors and grab the bottom right of the palette. Your brush then wants to be under the category of basics. There's the Forester brush, which is basically a soft air brush at this point. You can make your brush size fairly large, like a 50%. And first thing you want to do in the top right is just go around in a circular motion until you start to get a bit of fade on those, especially that last little bit of land. You kind of want that looking quite faint, but you want to bring the color across where possible, and towards the top you can kind of fade them out a bit more. Don't do a lot, you can always tone it down later. And then the other thing we'll do is just go ahead and set our brush size to like a 5%, and in certain little areas you can just very, very lightly with your pressure. Again, if you, as always, if you struggle with your pressure sensitivity, just bring your opacity down. Just wiggle your pen through there, creating patches of mist, like just floating in the air. Like very, if you keep your brushes super light, you'll actually add these beautiful, really lovely light patches, and they'll just build towards the entire scene. If you bring your brush size then down to like a 2%, you can add in a circular fashion with varying amounts of pressure, like misty kind of layers in here, and keeping my pressure extremely light, just so I can build up that little level of kind of misty and fog and perhaps like just water vapor, and just layering it in throughout the scene to create some variety. And just feather certain edges, create some variety in terms of the whole scene from top to bottom, that it's not just one consistent just bit of glow and that's it from that right hand side that we just created. And feel free to then set your brush size to like a 6% and overlap your light lines with a bit of a chunkier brush like this, a 6%, and then that would just fade things out. And then let's maybe do a little bit up towards the top, keeping it nice and light, and then we'll just leave it like that just for the second. So let's now build up this right hand side. Let's go to our layers. We'll create a new layer in front of our little mist and our background, and we'll go to our colors. We want to go ahead and grab the top of the second column there from the right. Brush wants to go back to the pepperberry, so let's just go right up to recents and pepperberry. You can then set your size to something around about, say, 50%, I think. And again, we just want to curate another bit of land kind of in here. But now you've separated and kind of potentially faded this grey, which is the same grey colour. You might get like a two-tone difference now, as in now I can see this grey that I'm drawing in doesn't look like the original one that we drew in, because we've got that layer of mist. So we're drawing in some like trees and bushes, etc. Just growth, basically. Very close towards us. A little bit in behind our little cliff top there. And let's go ahead and expand that all the way out here. And then once you start to kind of build it up, you can tap and push, and you might be able to, like, again, create like branches, etc. Just making its way out. Don't do too much, because we do have more colors to layer in right now, and you don't want to add in too much color. So we do have a variety of colors. Let's grab this one here first of all, top of the fourth column from the right. And you can just layer this in. Now, what I recommend we actually do is just create a new layer for the oranges, because we can tone them down in a second. So I've just created a new layer on top of the grey that we just had in. And then this way, we don't need to necessarily worry that it's too saturated or it's too this or it's too that. We can tone it down in a second. That's perfectly fine. So I'm just scattering in, letting the brush pressure be really light, just so that the brush can decide where it wants to kind of land on the screen. Does it want to add any color or does it not? And that's fine by me. I like that approach because it's just nice and random. A couple of little specks down towards the bottom, nothing too much at the bottom area. Then let's go back to our colors. Let's grab the lighter orange in the middle of that same column, so middle of the fourth column from the right. You can layer that on top. Focus these more lighter tones towards the top edge if you wish, like a little bit up towards here. Definitely want some oranges in here though, like, you know, a little bit there. A couple of little specks running off are perfectly fine. And again, leave the bottom where possible. You know, perhaps there's like a little bit of an overhang, so this grey here can just survive on its own. And then on that layer, you can go ahead and tap on it now. Bring its opacity down. That will just tone it down, add to the kind of misty effect. So if you bring that down to around about sort of 70%, that looks awesome. It just fades it out, fits in with the rest of the scene, and then we can make our way forward. So I'm going to leave those two layers for a minute. I'm going to work on this layer here. I'm going to tap on it, create a new layer, and then tap on that new layer and clipping mask it. Because I want to use the same grey as this, but I don't want it to be as same sort of opacity as this. So I'm going to tap on the layer and bring its opacity down to like 60%. I'll go back to my colours and grab then the dark tone, bottom of the, that's the bottom of the second column from the right. Let's get that brush size up a little bit to about 60%, because I just want to kind of run in some kind of vertical lines to indicate like overhang of rock and just shadows basically. Don't need to be too perfect in any way, shape or form. A couple of more patches in there, and then down towards the bottom here we will speckle in some just dark tone, just random scattering, especially all the way down here at the bottom. It'll look fine, perfect, and sort of add in variety in hues and colors, etc. So you can just shadow, basically as simple as that. So I added in little circular sort of specks down here, down that rocky cliff, more vertical kind of lining. And then we're going to do a similar fashion with the sort of greenery, but the orange tone. So we'll create another new layer. We won't drop the opacity nor clip it. We'll go to our colors and we will grab the color again at the top of the fourth column from the right. Get that brush size down a tiny bit, maybe down to around about 50%. And then on that grey layer, you can now work in some of the oranges on top of them as well. and they can just patch all the way down again in a similar way, just very, very lightly scattered in there. And then you can go very close to those previous oranges because they are, you know, slightly less opaque, should I say, than up here. So whatever we draw here now will just simply be darker, have more contrast to it. So I'm going to bring in the orange tones right towards the very top up there. I want to reveal this kind of cliff in here. Then go to my colors. We've got some other tones that we didn't yet work in. So let's grab the bottom of the third column from the right and just start layering in this color a little bit down here. Now it is a little bit lighter technically, but it's also a little bit kind of softer. So I'm just going to work that in on top of some of those dark oranges down here, little patch or two here, and then I'll leave it just down towards this bottom area. I'm then going to grab the middle of the third column from the right, similar fashion, just layer that on top. Just layer in that color a little bit down here, very kind of neutral kind of coloring in a way, but kind of matches the gray. There we go. And then a couple of little specks up towards the top, just so we can sort of make everything look a bit cohesive. And then I'm going to go back to my colors. I'm going to start working in the middle of the fourth column from the right up here, nice and bright orange. And then that can also make its way down here as well in a second. So I'll just scatter in some of these oranges, add in there on top of some of those light tones, will look fine. It's just about layering it all in, very light and scattery. Then go to your colors again. We've got this yellowish tone. That is going to be the top of the third column, and that wants to be right towards the top up here, where perhaps the light is just like bathing this like tree up here or this bush like shape, and just dashing it in. It's very grungy, it's very painterly, it's very expressive in a way, so you don't need to sort of focus too heavily on it. Just keep it very subtle and simple. Now we're going to leave it like that. You can always come back to this later on. I would urge you on with these layers, if possible, to keep hold of them. For example, you could even now bring that last layer that we dropped down to 70% and bring them down even further, bringing more attention to the front. It's optional. I'm going to bring it down to 60% and we'll move on from there. So that layer in behind, I've just toned it down to 60%. We're going to work on the cliff on the right hand side here. And for that, we're going to go ahead and tap on the layer and create a new layer. Tap on it and clipping mask it to it. Then go to your colors. We want to go ahead and start working in some of the lighter tones around it. So now the middle of the second column from the right, your brush, you want to go back into grunge and you want to move underneath Pepperberry and use the Flames brush. We've not used that yet. And set the brush size to say 10% just to get us started. And just where you've got, that's probably a little bit too big to be fair, about 4%. And just where you've got your like rocky edges there, you can light them up and add in like lighting coming down from above and leave gaps, you know, create like, you know, shadows by just literally just leaving space. So I'm going to add in like a big bright spot up here, and then maybe like a big sharp shape here out of nowhere, little dashes and specks here and there, just trying to keep it really random and scattery almost, and just dash them through, creating all sorts of different shapes. And then that may look a little bit kind of too close to the color in behind. So what we'll do is we'll go to our colors. We'll grab the color at the top of the same column, so top of the second column from the right. Then tap on the layer we were just working on and alpha lock it. So we can't paint outside of what we've already drawn in now, meaning I can freely just bring some of those grays a bit more to life by adding in like a little bit more highlight here and there. I'd like scatter in some gray on this one, maybe a smidge or two down here. And then all in all, you should just end up with like just random rocky kind of ledges. Now they look a little bit blobby almost. So what we'll do is we'll tap on the layer and add a mask to it. If you set your color then to black at the bottom of the disc, go back to your brush and go back into something like the Elphinstone brush, the pen that we've been using. And I always keep it around about 32% because it's pressure sensitive, so I can just adjust it anyway. I can just start chipping away into here and basically just trying to, every time I see a blob of colour, just like a little scuff or a little line or a little breakup perhaps. Okay, I've completely lost my train of thought because the dog started barking. I'm just making little scuffs and cuts into here, just breaking up some of these surfaces. You can bring your opacity down to 50% as well if you want to make some super light, like half opacity scuffs and buffs into here as well, like cracks, and just, if it's not, honestly, as long as you kind of crisscross all over the place and just try to look for those blob shapes that we created a second ago, and just where you feel is necessary, just break them up with some scuffs, buffs, lines, dashes, everything you can think of. Honestly, that's all that you really need to do. I've started to recently really lean into just really keeping it to a simple level. And that is honestly all it needs to be, especially if you turn off the guide and you can see and you zoom out, it just looks like a rocky ledge, and that's all it's meant to resemble, of course. Now let's move on to some other details. Let's bring back in the guide. Let's go ahead and create a new layer above where we're working on currently. And then if you want to, you could pinch those layers together for that last layer on the right hand side there. So all of that work now is on one layer like so. The rest of it will keep if you can. Under this cliff ledge here on the left, we're going to go ahead and we've got a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and go top left of the palette. We're going to keep the same brush, maximum opacity, and same brush size as before. We're just going to work in a tree now, and that is going to sort of be a little bit sort of out of scene to a degree. It's like just slightly out from where we are, but it's just poking its head just in. It's coming from behind this little cliff ledge here. So I want to chunk it up a little bit because it's got to have a little bit of strength to it. It's got to be able to support itself. And then I'm just going to start very lightly with lots of wiggles and squiggles and whatnot, and just overlapping lines, just letting the brush go all over the place. Just let it sort of wiggle its way through here, creating a lovely autumnal kind of tree-like shape. And you could let like one big branch just run up that way, for instance, just to indicate like, you know, things are running away from scene, but that's totally up to you. You can do whatever you like with your scene. Maybe a branch even coming in ever so slightly like so. And I'm going to even add in another one that's going to sort of come into here. Now be aware of your bat. Don't add in anything too close to the bat. You can always sort of trim this down later on if needs be. This is just meant to be additional kind of growth and detail, so it really doesn't need to be like a main plot almost of your scene and your sort of motion that we're creating here. Now we're going to go ahead and just fill those in, similar style to what we've done before. I'm going to create a new layer in front of it. Going to go to our colors. We're going to start to utilize these colors though, so we're going to go ahead and grab the middle of the second column. Your brush wants to go back to the pepperberry brush. Size, I've got it set to about 30%. And I'm just going to tap and push all over the place. We're creating the darkest tones first. Remember, autumnal, so it can be super scarce if you really want it to be, and that's perfectly fine. And this is the dark tone, and we're going to layer on some more color in a second. So you don't need to necessarily, you know, add in a load of this first. But you could alpha lock the layer if you really wanted to, if you were really happy with it as it was, and just layering in some new color on top. I'll show you that in just a second. And you can just sort of kind of make up, in a way, like new branches by just drawing in like a path of color, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to add some to this over here too. Little speckles of just very light sort of last holding on leaves, just onto there, lovely. Let the grunge brush do its thing. And you can just bring that also like all the way up into like the right hand side, just so it kind of creates like a bit of a border all the way around our scene. And then, as I mentioned, we can now lay in some more colours. For example, the top of the second column. Now you've got two options. You can tap on this layer and alpha lock it, which will mean you can't paint outside of what you've already drawn, and that way you know that the density is going to stay exactly the same. The only thing you'll be able to do, like I'm doing here as an example, is layer in some different tones, but I'm not adding in anything else. Your other option is to tap on it, turn off the alpha lock, and then get back in there and start layering on top. Now, of course, this is dependent on how much you've added in. You know what's on your screen. So I just want to give you the option just to say, well, I think I could add in some more. I could still get away with it. But you can do both. You can then alpha lock it and then add in some color. And you just want to sprinkle these lovely colors all over the place. So you can jump between the two options if you need it. We're then going to go ahead and go to our colors. We can add a little bit of yellow in here. So we can grab the bottom of the second column from the right and just like a little few patches. This is where I definitely recommend you alpha lock the layer. However, the other thing you could do is create a new layer and drag it underneath your orange colors, because the light's coming from the opposite side, so those leaves might be a little bit brighter from the opposite side. So you can just dash in some yellow kind of here and there to indicate the brighter tone, but it's simply only happening from the opposite side. So you could add some like little specks in some of the gaps you had, or little dashes here and there just behind some of the oranges. But feel free to also go back to the layer if you want to, the previous one, and add in some yellow on there as well. Just zoom out, get an idea for your scale of everything. You can always, of course, come back to everything. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm probably going to pinch those two layers together. I'm happy with them as they are. I'm going to go up to my rock ledge here on the left-hand side, the little cliff. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to the actual shape. Let's go back to our colors, and we're going to grab the middle of the first column. Now this color is not too far different to the color that's already here. So just bear that in mind, and that's on purpose. Now we're going to go back to the flames brush again. So it's under recent, it's the flames, otherwise it's under grunge at the bottom. Set that brush size to something maybe around about 7 or 8%, and we need to start indicating where these rocks are using this slightly light grey tone. So I'm going to, block in like a bit of ledge here where the light's casting down. I'm going to start at the bottom because it's probably the easiest, because we know that the light's just bathing down into here. Keep pressure nice and light, scribble your way through it, highlight the ledges that are facing up towards the light source in your imagination, like in your scene. There we go. And then we also need to highlight, ledges coming down. Now, it's probably easy also to start at the top on this one, maybe create like a little bit of color here coming across, just to indicate the top edge of the overhang of the kind of cave almost. And then like other little lines here and there. Again, similar fashion to what we did on that right hand side, just trying to show all the rocky kind of shaping and whatnot, but also make sure you leave gaps. And if you haven't left gaps, that's perfectly fine, because we've got another color to add in. This is just that little bit of base layer almost to indicate what it is. And let's do exactly that. Let's go ahead and go to our layers. I'm going to create a separate layer for it and tap on it and also clip and mask it. Go to my colors and grab the bottom of the first column. Let's make the brush size a bit bigger, smaller, down to 4%. Just highlight some of these ledges. Now, this is going to be particularly bright compared, so keep your pressure as light as possible, even lower your opacity if you can, and just keep your pressure nice and light. Highlight the ledges that come in sort of into the light. So do some here, and because we're on a separate layer, we can do that same trick that we did a second ago on the other side and just kind of erase from it in a second as well. So I can just highlight little bumps and lumps, etc., that catch in some light. And it's not to say some parts can't be nice and bright. You can have like these ledges here, as they maybe perhaps like leave the sort of cave getting bathed in that lighting more so than anywhere. You can then have a little bit more light coming down, so I can bring the brush size all the way down to its smallest size now, sort of scuff my way through here, trying to create miniature sort of levels of just something catching some lighting. Just boom, coming down, leave the top edge, with the exception of potentially like a little bit of lighting, perhaps on say like here, just coming across a little bit into scene. But again, looking maybe a little bit too blocky, a little bit too rounded almost as well at the same time. And I'm just going to make sure that there is like a definite few that are particularly brighter, as I do want to show that that light is coming in. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'll hold down on my eraser. If I hold down, it switches it to the exact same brush. And now I can just hack away at some of those highlights, especially the ones that are a little bit more rounded, and just slim them down a little bit like there. That's just become, I've gone across there, a little bit of a thin ledge now almost. Down here, make your brush size as small as possible, just sort of chip into them, sort of let the texture of the brush also kind of hack away for you. So here I can go mainly on the left hand side of these lines so that I can leave the right hand side as it was, because then I can force the highlight just onto like the edge. A little few scuffs down here too, just chipping away at some of the brightest little spots, and more, just messing it up a little bit more than it was. Now we can get into drawing in some like random growth down here as well. We are going to create a new layer. We're going to go back to our colors and grab top left of the palette. Your brush wants to be the Elphinstone brush again, same size as before, 32%. And watch this, we are just going to go crazy. We're drawing in lots and lots of random growths. So just dash these all the way through. You can draw them at different heights. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. Just kind of like here in front of this cliff, cave, should I say, entrance, there's like growth happening down here on the floor. You can have one that's like particular and like, purposeful, like, so that one there is a little bit longer, growing a bit higher. I can put some more growths on that in a second. Maybe there's another one as well, just a little bit beside it. A few little tiny ones up here, maybe even growing in the shadowy parts of the rock perhaps. Lightest amount up here. And look at how quick and easy I'm doing it. And I'm literally just flicking the pen all over the place just to create growth, because I want it to be messy. I want it to be all over the place. I want it to have real natural look to it, like twiggy and scattery and just scatty almost. So there we go. We've got some growths just happening in there. We also then want to go ahead and go to our brush and go back to the pepperberry brush. Bring that size down to around about 12%. And just start tapping your way through here to create like growths, whether it's like the top of flowers or some plants, etc. It doesn't really matter necessarily the logistics of it. It's just growths. That's all it is. Definitely add some towards the base as well. That will help you kind of blend in these lines into the kind of environment around it, so you can kind of create growths towards the bottom. If you've got any lines that are just peering out of nowhere, just make sure you chuck a little something on them too. You know, just like a little bit up and down that one there. This one here that got a little bit longer, I'm going to just let my pen just be super light along it, and where it wants to cluster, it can cluster. I don't mind. I can invent new little avenues as well, but just a little something like this, letting that speckliness just dash its way through. I'm really, like I said, really enjoying the kind of grungy look to things at the minute. It's quite freeing, to be honest. I set it to 18% because you don't need to sort of focus too heavy on, does this look like this, does this look like this? Just let it accumulate, let it get to its final sort of form, and then you'll be able to see how it looks, and it will just really come together. I'm just going to go down to 2% and just see if I can just create some purposeful kind of lines off of this main one here, just to add in, again, speckles of kind of growth and detail, just to make things look a little bit different, and just rough up a few of them as well. Now from there, we're going to go ahead and go to our layers, create another new layer. Go to your colors and start adding in some of those tones we did before. So let's go to the middle now of the second column. Same brush, about 4 or 5% still. And then just make your way through here, adding in growths of color now. So we can go along some of those edges. Of course, we're on a separate layer, so you will be building on top. So you might want to be quite purposeful with where you actually purposely want to layer the color in. So like I'm just dashing my way through these growths, adding in these autumnal tones. And go a bit bigger, 15% perhaps, just to dash in some colour, perhaps a little bit faster. Not that it needs to be fast, you can take your time. I'm just thinking, how can I just let the scattering be nice and random, do it itself, all the way through the whole scene. Off to the right hand side down here as well. A little bit of colour up and onto here. Don't be afraid to put some on your rocks here as well, like just in front. You know, like a little patch of something growing here. That looks lovely, just like it blends the two sort of layers together a little bit as well. So you get that lovely blend of growths and rocks and hard and fragile. Let's also then go back to our brush and go back to the elphinstone. And then we can just create some more flicks here, really lightly, but try and go over the top of some of your previous lines and just dash in a little bit of kind of this lovely orange tone. Again, it just helps create like levels of depth to it. Then go to your colors and grab the bottom, let's go bottom, of the second column. Brush back to Pepperberry, similar fashion. You're kind of working in now where you want your lightest tones to be. So they can be like up here where perhaps the light's coming through, landing on here. Just random scatterings. Again, in a minute we'll use the pen to dash in some color in there too. You know, a little couple of dashes along here. I hope you're enjoying the kind of, and understanding necessarily the concept of like the grunginess, you know, letting the pen do all the work, let it sort of be nice and scattery and just all over the place. Again, elphinstone, back to your brush and get in there and maybe just brighten up like a few little bits here and there, like find some of your grassy blades that you might want to just bring into the light a tiny bit. Don't do too many right repetitively next to each other either, just like all over the place. Some in front here as well. Lovely. And I've got some more tutorials like this coming out across Patreon and YouTube in this style, so make sure you're subscribed for that content. Let's go ahead then and go back to our colours though and go top left of the palette and then get back in here and start drawing in some more grassy blades, but these are the shadowest tones. So the shadowy tones, so they're going to be the closest to us, and they can now layer on top of all those beautiful orange tones. So we can go back to the Pepperberry as well, and you can start just drawing in shadow back on top of those and just kind of blending everything together, because you do need shadows constantly, and your highlights to be like a little bit away from us based off of where the lighting is. Like it should be on the opposite side. It's eye over there, and then we are just going to shadow the bits down here towards the bottom, just trying to blend in this whole like idea of just wild growth. So we've done that. Let's go ahead and move on into the main subject, which is the bat. So we're going to go ahead and you can pinch those two last layers together if you like into one. Your rock, stone, etc. on the left hand side, as long as you're super happy with it, you can pinch those two together. You can even pinch it to the shape as well should you need to. And then just above your grass that you just created, create a new layer. Go to your colours and grab the top of the fifth column. Brush wants to go back into the elphinstone, same brush size. And we're basically just going to use the guide now just to get the basic shape in. So we're going to create this little line here, The only thing you're going to kind of need to make sure you do is just make sure that you draw in and don't leave any gaps. You know, just try not to leave any gaps in the lining, so that in a minute you can just drag and drop the colour in. So I'm doing that here, for example. I'm just trying to make sure I just draw in like the claws and like the feet, just keeping it very simple, following the guide. I provide guides when sometimes it's just like we just need to get a lot of basic content in and you don't need to freehand it to a degree. Like I want you just to be able to get the shapes in, and then we can just crack on from there. Now I am actually missing a line, but that's not a problem. We can just kind of bring in a line to like here and then kind of just loop it round up towards the bottom of this line here, up and into there. And then we still go all the way along this line here. Just trying to make sure I get right up against it. Go all the way across and under. I'm trying not to make it perfect either. Like a bat doesn't have like perfectly curved little lines underneath. And then again, like little kind of claws on the top here of what is essentially their arms. And then up and into there. And then we'll go ahead and do the ears up and into a point, down and round. So up and into a point, down and round. And then here, just kind of, if you can, with your pressure nice and light, just kind of spike the hair. But it's going to be very pixely, so you might just need to, underneath your little spiky lines, just kind of block in the colour, so that in a minute when we drag and drop the colour in, it will actually fill it in. We can always adjust that later on. Again, a few little sort of scribbly lines here, just to kind of rough up the line, and then we make our way up here. So I hope you're enjoying this tutorial and all that other Halloween tutorials as well, if that's what you're going for right now. I have got a whole playlist on YouTube for Halloween style tutorials, so there's loads to be checking into, lots of different styles as well, and it's just good fun while it's here. Down into this little point down here. Let's go up and around and then into there. Now that shouldn't have any gaps, but we'll drag and drop, we'll find out. If it does sort of spill out, just hold and drag to the left hand side. You can lower the threshold at the top, and then that will make sure you're in the lines and you're staying in there. The only thing you might need to do is like just these little claws on the top, just make sure you get in there and colour them. Now with that done, we can actually then just triple check we've not got any sort of speckles. We can start getting into some lining of it. Now if we go ahead and we tap on our guide and we invert it, so tap on it and invert it, you'll see all the white lines now. If we tap on our bat and we create a new layer and tap on it and clipping mask it, then go ahead and swipe these to the left to right on both, and group them together and just rename the group and call it bat. Just keep things nice and organized. Now on this empty layer, let's go to our colors. Let's just double tap at the top of the disk to select white just for a minute. And then we're going to go ahead and, same brush, we're going to go ahead and make sure we are working on these lines. Now what I've done is I've gone to my guide, I've tapped on it and inverted it, which has changed it, if I turn it back up to 100%, to white now. That's what you're going to need to do. So tap on the guide, invert it, you'll be able to see the lines against the dark shape. Tap on it and just bring that opacity right down to like a 10%, and then go back down to that new layer that we created. We've still got white, but it's only temporary. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and draw in the lines. So we're going to go along, it's like the main kind of things we need to indicate throughout the structural sort of part of the bat and its wings. So you can then create like a little small line here, for example. You want to go along the top edge and then keep it very simple, just like a little wrap around at the claw up there. We're going to go along its kind of arms almost as well, like along here and then down, and you can create like another little line of detail, and again a line across the top. Just the top of the wing. Again, this is all temporary, these lines. I'm going to do the same down the leg. So just a little bit of colour down there too. You do a little bit of kind of just dashing and scraping along the body there. A little bit on top of the feet perhaps. A little bit under the bottom there. From that point, we're going to move across and we are going to do the top of the arm, again, like shape here, and then up and into the claw there, and then wrap that around and down, letting the taper of the brush get really light as we make our way towards the end of the line. So you let your pressure get really light, then a little wrap around of the claw, and again a little bit along that top edge, just to kind of make sure we brighten up all the accents we need to. Another accent we actually need to is the nose, and to do that we are just going to go ahead and make sure we go along this line here and then down the opposite side, and then just around those kind of nostril shapes that I've created for you. Just layer in this kind of colour into there. That should be enough for a minute, perhaps just like a little rounding at the bottom of the nose, and then that should be okay. We can tap away, we can zoom away, should I say, and then from there we can go ahead and go to the layer, tap on it and alpha lock it, we're then going to go to our colors and grab the middle of that same column, middle of the fifth column, go back to layer, tap on it and fill it. Now those lines will be super faint. You can just about see them on screen now, but we'll work around them. So we're going to tap on the bat and create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and continue with the same color, but go to your brushes. We're going to go ahead and we are going to use a new brush, and we haven't used it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and swipe it to the left and go to find, because this brush is in creative and it's the Bicenno brush. And we are going to have a opacity of 100%, size probably want to be a bit smaller than that, about 9% just to start with. And then in between your bat wings, we could probably go up to around about that 20% mark, to be fair. In between your lines that you created, and you can just about see it on screen, towards the bottom edge, you're just going to lighten them up just towards the bottom. So in between those kind of, I would say skeletal, but I'm not sure if that's correct necessarily, but you understand the sort of those lines that we created to show the structure of the wing, just sort of towards the bottom edges of those. Leave the body, so leave a little bit of a gap around the body. So I can just do like here, the underside of that wing there. Just patching it in. It doesn't matter if you end up with patches as well, like a dark patch and a light patch. It's perfect, if anything, because it shows natural variety in the wing and its opacities, etc. So we just added in a little bit of grey, as you can see there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tap on the smaller size there, about 3%. We're going to go back to our guide and turn that back on. Now on this layer is where we need to start adding in all the kind of basic detail and structure of the face and body. So look at the angle of the brush. I'm just going to go around the base here, adding in like a few little dashes of this brush. This line here indicates a little bit of a wiggle of some fur along here. And look at the angles. I'm kind of just jittering my way into that zigzaggy line. So I'm going around here and I'm just zigzagging with a very short distance. I'm not trying to make the brush travel too far, because otherwise you end up with something quite big and blobby and a little bit kind of soft with its opacity, and that's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be super harsh. Now then you've got these two curved lines here. They indicate again a bit of a rounding of the face. You want to be between those lines and just wrapping round, adding in a little bit of grey, and turn off your guide like in between so you can just triple check what it is you've added in. We've wrapped the colour around the base of the body there, and then we're going to go back in and bring the guide back in. We're going to do the same but over here too. So you're working from outwards, inside outwards, so you're pushing out. Very short travel if possible, just along that line, just jittering it, pushing it out, letting that speckly kind of part of the brush take effect. And that's actually going to go ahead and wrap all the way round. So I'm tapping and pushing. You can hear my pen. Now I'm going to fill in the face, again pushing outwards constantly from the center of the face. I'm going to go all the way to the top of the head, pushing out that colour. We want that speckly short distance and travel to the brush. And then don't go on top of the ears. And because if we keep this nice and short, it actually looks a little bit kind of fur-like as well. And that's kind of, I say fur, again, don't know if that's necessarily the correct term, but it should be, I imagine. But we're going to go from the nose up and out, just creating the general kind of grey tones across the bottom of the ear. So you go across that kind of line, again pushing up and out into that kind of zigzaggy line around the edge that we just added in. And then just keep making sure you've added in enough on the face. And then back over to this left hand side where again we've got those zigzaggy lines to indicate the edge of the face. So I'm working between those lines, just pushing outwards all the way up round towards the back of the ear. Still want to add in like dashes and pushes here just to indicate a little bit of the sort of texture in here. Dashes and pushes, pushing away into the body, and then again just go back to your guide, turn it off. This is what you should start to see with your line work. You can make it a little bit more sort of grey tone appear just above what is the eyes, just so you can make sure that you indicate the darkness that will sit around the eye. So I'm just pushing up and out constantly, just trying to fill out this space here, make it look nice and furry and fluffy almost around here. Now the next color is where we can bring this back out. So what I mean by that is if we create a new layer, we go ahead and we go to our colors and we grab the bottom of the same column, bottom of that fifth column. Brush size can go back up, I reckon though, to probably around about 13%. We're going to work in those wings again, and you're going to just push up from the bottom edge in, following the kind of structure of the wing, variety of pressure and application, to be honest with you, and constantly keep pushing up and in towards like the point. So the point is here in between these two lines. So I can push in the color there in between towards the bottom edge of the wing, brightening it up, making sure it looks like a little bit more transparent in a way. You don't have to do the entirety of the wing as well. Leave it in certain areas to be a little bit more faint. So I'm pressing extremely lightly. If you struggle with pressure, please lower your opacity. And then I'm going to go up into this part of the wing, add in like a few little sort of random bits of grey, little bits of random grey up there too. Not too heavy, just keeping it nice and random. And then we work back in the face. So we go back down to that 3% marker. We're going to start working in some highlight coming from above. So we're going to start pushing again upwards here on the edge of the fur, especially on top of the head, on top of those lines, especially if you've got some that you can pull out and sort of draw on top of, you'll be able to bring in that highlight. And the highlight is quite strong behind us, so you can push and put in quite a bit of colour in here, especially right on the edge. Just wiggle your pen along the very top edge there, like I've just done. There you go, wiggle, 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 fill it all in, and then bring in like a little bit of that wiggle around the back of the ear here, and then a little bit onto the face, just a little bit over the eye, a tiny bit, a little bit more over towards this left-hand side. Couple more specks, just pushing the colour in. We do have a brighter tone to add in shortly, so that'll be our final tone, but just now, just trying to indicate, again, just additional little spots of highlight here and there. Not very much of it, to be fair. Now on this layer, we then also want to go ahead and actually move it above our line work that we created, because on this layer, we then want to go ahead and just go down the very top edge of the wing here to show, again, the brightness, maybe a little bit over the top of the ear, just a little bit of colour. And then we're going to go just along that top edge again, a little bit around the claw, a little bit along there. And then that should just about give us enough kind of highlight to work out all the details to a degree. Again, a little bit along that top edge and a little bit along this top edge as well. Let's then go ahead and think about maybe blocking this one in a bit more, but let's add in the brighter tone. So let's go ahead and we'll go to our layers. We will create a new layer. We'll tap on it and clipping mask it as well. I'm going to go to our colors. Now we do have this grey tone, the bottom of the 6th column there. Keep the same brush. I'm going to just sort of build up colour again. So a little bit along these edges here of the wings, a little bit on the top of the claw there, a little bit along here too, a little bit along, as we say, and then just a little bit around these edges as well. Again, that kind of pushing outwards kind of fashion, just to kind of indicate the highlight landing on the fur. You said fluff and fur then in the same sentence. A couple more pushes out on this top edge, again just to indicate brightness, because the brightest spot is right just behind our bat. So we just need to indicate the bits that are sticking up enough that are catching some lighting in here. Just additional little bits of colour around like the edge of the face here too, just coming round, just indicating that little bit of fluff. And you can start to see it really come together. And we've still got even more colour to add in. Now we can just do a little bit just to indicate the edge, perhaps. Keep it really, really light, just down this edge here. There we go, just a tiny bit, a little bit underneath the face. Again, just a tiny, tiny bit, just to show a little bit of the kind of structure. I am going to go to about 20% and just ever so slightly in the wings here and there, just patch in a little bit, again, brighter tone in here, because they are so varied in their sort of opacity as the skin kind of stretches. Maybe a little bit up towards that top edge. Again, just a few little patches in there. And just like before, we'll just set our brush size down to the 3% mark and just brighten up the top of the wing. A little bit on that claw and a little bit again on the very, very top edge. So we're just building up color tones. Now we want to go ahead and add in a brighter highlight again. So we'll create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Go to your colors. We want to go ahead and add in quite a light tone. So I want to go and grab the middle of the far right column. I want to keep it quite faint. So I'm going to go middle of far right to start with. And then just on the top of the head here, and start very light. Keep your pressure very, very light. So right on the very top edge there, you can see me just wiggling all the way across. You can brighten that up, that's fine. The light is coming all the way through. And then again, you can just dash it here now, just towards the top of the head, on the certain spots that are just catching enough light. Very, very short travel with my brush, like I'm tapping and pushing, and then occasionally giving it a little bit of a wiggle where it doesn't sort of seem like it's going to apply very much. I'll just kind of wiggle my way through it. And then at the back there, we'll add in a little bit more along there, a little bit more down this edge here too. Again, just trying to indicate little bits of highlight just coming across, perhaps a little bit on top of the wing there, maybe a little bit on top of the ear as well. A couple more dashes. Tippity tapping. Then what we can do is we can bring our brush size down to like a 1% and just indicate the eyes with the 2 little dots that I've put in there for you already. So they'll just give you that little bit of a glow from the eyes, enough that you should be able to turn off your guide and it should definitely resemble a bat, that, you know, just you can see the details there, but you don't need to see all of it, if that makes sense. So you can see its facial structure, but not enough that you can, you know, you don't want to sort of be diving into the details too much. Now I'm going to go down to the previous layer and go back to my colors and grab the bottom of the 6th column there. And then just on top of the nose, I'm going to brighten that up just the tiniest little bit, like a little wiggle of colour through there, a little speck underneath perhaps, just to try and bring the nose a little bit more outwards towards us. There we go, look at that, comes right out towards us, separates it from that kind of flat aesthetic. What we can then also do is maybe just add like a little glisten of lighting perhaps along some of these sort of structural lines, but keeping it super, super gentle, because we don't want to add in too much on them. Especially maybe just leave the right hand side so it's just not seen at all. Now your bat is done. Now it's totally up to you what you do with it. For example, you could tap on the group and flatten it into one layer. It is up to you if you want to go to your adjustments and go to curves, and it's totally up to you. But if you drag the top right node on gamma, drag it to the left hand side, you can brighten the bat up a little bit. And if you tap with one finger, you can see this option here, and then preview, you can see the difference in the bat. So it's totally up to you. You can then even bring in the shadows a little bit again, just to bring in a bit more darkness, but your brighter tones will be brighter. So again, tap with one finger, see the difference. I just want to give you that option in case you want to make your bat stand out a little bit more. I'm pretty happy with mine at the top of the 3rd column there. From the right, and then a little bit in with the dark tones again. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and then I'm going to tap on my adjustments when I've done. So you can see the difference in the bat. It just makes its details a little bit more prominent, and if you were a little bit sort of more scarce with the color like I was, it just brings out the lighter tones, because I'm always typically on the edge of sort of being a little bit less saturated, less contrasty until the very end anyway. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and create another branch over here. We're going to fill out the scene now with details. So we're going to create a new layer. Going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, bottom left of the palette, and your brush wants to be, again, let's go right up to the top in recent, Elphinstone, and we're going to draw in another branch that's going to sort of come in from a little bit kind of like here, and it's going to sort of trickle its way out and onto the scene there. I'm going to leave it as simple as that, because all I'm going to do then is go to my colors and grab the middle of the 1st column, and then at the bottom edge of that line, just make my way along it, following it, but also trying to make sure I leave a little bit of that highlight, because that's where the light's coming through onto our branch. Simple branch, done like so. We can then go ahead and add in some leaves to it. Now we're going to go to our layers, create a new layer, go to your colors, top of the 3rd column there, and we're only going to draw one leaf, and then we're going to reuse it. So we're going to draw in one line down into a slightly heavier point at the bottom. Then roughly around about here, you're going to want to go ahead and sort of branch off up here, a little one off to the side there too, and then a little one off from there. You can create another one from here. We have a couple of smaller little sort of vein-ish like lines here and there to indicate like the growth of the leaf, you know, just all the spinal areas. And perhaps mine is a little bit too high, so I'll hold down on my eraser until I use the same brush and just trim it down a tiny bit. Then you want to go ahead and go to your layer below, create a new layer, go to your colors and grab the top of the 2nd column. And then from your point at the top, just create like a loop. And then you're basically sort of finding all the ends of your spines there and creating little sort of flicks and sort of almost like holly-ish kind of vibes to it. You're creating like flick-offs to basically outline the leaf. Very, very simple kind of process. The only thing that changes is when you get towards the bottom here, you can kind of zigzag a little bit to just connect them together across the very bottom. So then you create like another one here, you create another one there, another one out, and then connect them together, drag and drop the color in. Now, you just need to triple check you've not got any gaps all the way around the edge. There's a big gap there, so I can drag and drop the color in once I've filled in everywhere. Drag and drop the color in, and you'll just get a simple leaf. That's all it's meant to be, as simple as that. And then from there, we can color it in. So we can tap on the layer, we can alpha lock it, go to your colors, and we can grab the middle of the 2nd column, Brush, we will go back into the by channel brush. Set that size to about 3%, maybe a smidge bigger, 7%. There we go. And then we'll just sort of darken up at random spotches, so like in between the gaps, you know, leave like a little bit of a gap perhaps very close to your spines there of the leaf, but you can honestly just patch it in all over the place. It's autumn, the leaf will be sort of dying and sort of fading a little bit, so you can just patch it in like this. Then go back to your colours and grab the bottom of the second column. Let's bring in some yellowish tone up towards the top, so bringing it back into life a little bit more. A couple more patches of this, and again go down like the edges of your spines perhaps, just to maybe sort of bring them out a little bit more as well, show that kind of spiny structure in there. A little bit on the edges, a couple more patches in here, and again just randomly create a leaf shape in there. That's all it needs to be, splodges and all sorts of stuff. Then grab the top of the third column and just a few very, very, very light patches of the darker tone, maybe a little bit towards the bottom edge, and just here and there, again, just randomly scattered in between will look fantastic. It will just give it that messy, real look to it. Now at this point, that leaf's done, and we're just going to reuse it. We're going to pinch those two together, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, grab your brush, or your cursor, sorry, use uniform, scale it down in size, we'll rotate it, and we'll just chuck one over here, trying to just somewhat think about where our little branch is that we created. Again, we'll go back to our main leaf, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, grab your cursor, move it up, and then you can use uniform. You can use distort. You can just like drag this down here. You can just change the direction completely. A leaf is just so random, isn't it? It's a random angle, so you can just find another one, chuck it in there. You can even use warp and adjust the shape completely. And then again, swipe that one to the left, duplicate it, grab your cursor, uniform, rotate it round, and keep attaching a few more to this branch up here till you've got roughly around about 5 or 6, to be honest with you. That would look really good. So you can even sort of dash 2 very close together like so, and they're just going to give you that sort of more realistic look to it. I'm going to go back to the main leaf and just grab my cursor and rotate it so it's upside down now and attaches, or maybe off to the side, to that branch that we created. So we've got like an actual something to attach it to. If we go to our layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, we can also grab our cursor, use uniform, scale it down in size, and we can bring it down. We can even have one kind of like floating here as if it's falling. And then let's just grab that, put it to the very bottom of the stack, because then I can swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Grab my cursor. Again, I can scale it down in size. I can distort it completely and just really adjust it freely and just maybe chuck it among the growths down here. So it's like fallen down perhaps. And that one is mid-fall as well, which will look really cool. Now, what you then want to do is you want to make sure you've got where you know your main leaf is there. The ones above it, you can pinch them all onto one layer. You can then go ahead and the 2 below, you can pinch them onto one layer as well. Just keep hold of your main leaf in case you want to add any more to it. Now, the next stage is to start refining this, really bring it all together at the very end. So what we're going to do is we're going to go above our leaves and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and go top left of the palette. Your brush wants to be back in basics and the forester brush. Size probably wants to be around about, maybe about 25%. And then just round the bottom edge down here. We're just going to start vignetting our design a little bit, probably a bit bigger with the brush size, to be honest, about 40%. Just darken that up down into here. Leave the top of this a little bit brighter. Then about 25% just over here. Just take away a little bit of color. There we go, darken that up. And this is where we're going to really take the lighting and make it more dramatic. Go over your leaves over here at the left-hand side. But because we're drawing on top of them, they're going to lose a bit of light, but they're still going to be present as a layer in case we want to grab them back out. We then want to go ahead and move back a layer in terms of actually back in the actual whole design. Now, earlier on, we created this light layer that sits in front of the background. See the difference that makes? If we go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath that, we then want to carry on our sort of plan here where just towards the bottom now, we're just going to darken this up like in the valley, just kind of darken that up. Like just so it's clear and obvious, like between these pieces of land, it gets really dark down here in the cave because of course that's where the bats will want to live. So we'll just darken that up a little bit more towards the bottom of our scene. And then let's go ahead and start detailing again. And this is where I like to say it's detail in a sense that we just add in lots of content and things scattered throughout the whole design. So if we go ahead and create a new layer underneath our bat, if we keep the same color for a minute and we go back to our brush, right to the top, recents and elfin stone, let's create some more bats in the distance. So just create like a circular blob and then like one bit and then one bit again, and then, you know, just create like the underside of some wings. And then, you know, these bats can be at all sorts of angles, so it doesn't really matter what it kind of looks like. It's just to indicate that there are multiple bats here. So just like you can create the classic 2-wing approach, but maybe just widen up the wings because they have such wide spans that, there we go. We can add in a couple more, just sort of making their way down and in towards here. I could maybe do the same again here and just like 1, 2 pushes with my pen and another 2, and then just kind of connect them all together so that they are like one big wing. So a little simple shape like this, it's just blodge, 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 blodge. And then it should look like a bit of a bat in the distance. You can always hold down on your eraser and maybe sort of trim the edges if you need to kind of just adjust the shape. But 3 of them sort of floating around up there I think will look really good. You can then tap on them and just bring their opacities down because they're a little bit further back, down to maybe sort of 60%, just so they're faint and they fit in with the rest of the scene. We're then going to get into a new thing that I'm really loving doing, and we're going to go right to top of our layers, but underneath our sort of shadowy layer that we introduced, and create a new layer. Go to your colors and grab the, let's grab this color here, top of the second column, same brush, and all you're going to now do is, because it's like autumnal and there's like growths flying all over the place, you can just dash and create like the idea that there's a lot of things happening, like there's a lot of wind perhaps in the sky, or in the air should I say, and you can create lots and lots of like flying debris almost by just scattering in here. You can use this brush shape and the kind of little bit of a cheese wedge almost that it creates to create these lovely shapes, and you can connect a few together to create the idea of a leaf, but it's not as detailed as those ones we created earlier. For example, you can do a triangle, like little sort of flick offs like this to create, yes, you create like a blob, but it's just meant to be a leaf that's floating in the air, falling. And honestly, this is the part of the design I love the most, because it just brings everything together, like just the whole idea that there's a lot happening. You can do it from within the cave as well. And don't worry in a minute if you think, actually, mine don't look enough that sort of detailed. We are going to layer in another color as well on top of this kind of floating idea. So in a minute, you'll be able to sort of add multiple colors to one blob if you've created them. So let's just go ahead and just add in more, just falling throughout. So these are just leaves that are not getting the detail, in fact, that like the other ones did earlier, and that's fine. These are just part of the scene, all sorts of bits and bobs, and you can create like flicks of blades of grass here and there, or I say grass, whatever you want to curate in your scene. But the busier this looks, I think, the better. If I then go to my colors and I go ahead and grab this color here, the middle of the 4th column from the right, I can go back over some of those leaves, and look, if I just dash in a bit of color on top of them, they just have a little bit more going for them, to the point where perhaps when you zoom out, they just have like a bit more variety to their coloring. You don't want to do it everywhere, but like you can do little blodges. You can also dash these as well throughout the whole of your scene to curate even more leaves in here. And again, show that kind of windiness and the movement and the whipping of the air perhaps, and just everything moving around. And then you're on top of those leaves as well, so you can draw on top of those if you really wanted to, you know, bring out some of the colors in them. Lots of dashes, lots of teeny tiny ones as well, look absolutely fantastic. And look how much more motion and just how active it looks. If we turn that layer on and off, it goes from quite plain and empty and boring now to really energetic, lots of movement, just very simply by tapping and pushing the brush around, creating blobs and leaves in the air. Something I've only recently started doing, but I'm really enjoying. Now, one thing you can do if you really want to is just tap on your eraser, go to basics, and then go to the forester brush. Keep that size nice and small, like 3%, and just lightly on a few of them, you can just tone them down. There you go. Look, see, you can just tone them down so they're not all big blotches. You can just tone a few down here and there. Don't do too many. You know, make sure you've got quite a few still nice and bright, but or saturated, but just a few of them toned down will look great. We'll just add in like a bit of shadow perhaps as well. Now for me, that's looking awesome. I'm really happy with it. However, you can go ahead and take this to another level if you want to blur the background. So what you can do is, I always tend to go ahead and sort of make backups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off everything that is at the top here above this kind of cliff and the tree. So here and above, just turn off everything all the way to the top. Make sure your guide is also off. And I'm also going to go ahead and turn off those branches and leaves as well. Likewise, those leaves. So now I'm just left with the kind of background area, and we also want to go ahead and make sure that this kind of rock over here is also turned off. So that's everything to the very back. If you swipe down with 3 fingers and go to copy all, then tap just underneath that last layer we turned off, swipe down with 3 fingers and hit paste. It will then paste in your entire design as a whole new layer on there, which basically mirrors everything that's underneath, and then you can go ahead and turn everything back on above, excluding your guide. And then if you go to your adjustments, you go to gauge and blur, you can actually swipe from left to right now and just blur out the background, maybe 3, maybe 4, 5%. It depends on how high you want to go, but that softer little bit of glow will just sort of feather things out, focus on your bat as well a little bit more, and sort of take away a little bit of those details back there. Now I don't want to do everything. I do like the grungy look to mine, so I'm going to go to around about just 3%, and then I'm going to tap on my layers, and I think I am missing one layer turned on. Yes, and that's that dark tone there. Now if I go ahead and I pinch with 2 fingers, go full screen with 4, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this autumnal bat design. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them. Come and check out my Patreon, because that's where I post even more tutorials every single month. In fact, I've got a catalogue now of over 150, nearly 160 exclusive tutorials that are not available here on YouTube. They are only available on Patreon, so make sure to check that out using the link in the description down below. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you will love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.